Good morning. This public hearing conducted by the Committee on Appropriations and Adjudications will come to order. Notice of the public hearing was disseminated to all local media outlets via electronic format on Wednesday, February the 7th, 2013, with a second notice provided on Monday, February the 12th. Notice of the public hearing was also made known on the Guam Legislature's website. We have two bills on the agenda today, Bill 235-34 and Bill 204-34. Bill 204-34 is a substituted version and second hearing as required by the standing rules. And I understand that students from Simon Sanchez are on their way down for that hearing. So I will begin with 235. And that bill was introduced by Senator Snogestein, an act to approve the settlement between the government of Guam and John Fernandez in the matter of Fernandez versus Guam Board of Education and in the district court case number CV00080 in accordance with 1 GCA section 1820. Here to testify are Mr. Orcott from the AG's office, why don't I just have everybody come up? Mark Brandiola, Juan McNitch, Marie Gutierrez, Elaine Rudolph, and Jonathan Bloss. Diaz. Mr. Chairman, who do you wish to address us first? Please.
Good morning, Honorable Speaker, Senator Frank Hagen, Senator Mr. Castro, Suzus Masi Palestina Oportunidad. I'm here to provide testimony in support of Bill 235-34, approving the settlement between Government of Guam and GDOE Superintendent John Fernandez. We appreciate the legislature's acknowledgement and desire to address this issue. In compliance with subsection 1820, Chapter 18 of Title I GCA, the language contained in Bill 235-34 provides sufficient authority to allow the department to now move forward in the final steps in completing this process. We thank you and the members of the 34th Guam Legislature for your prompt attention and ask the legislature to act on the bill in the next available legislative session. Sizus Masi.
Thank you. Mr. Orcott, or who do you wish? Ms. Gutierrez, do you wish to?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Maria Gutierrez, the Vice Chair of the Guam Education Board. Good morning, Senators. I'm here just to echo the support of our chair, but I was the board chair when we signed this agreement on October 27, 2017. So I'm here to support, and I ask the legislature to please, if possible, put this in your next agenda. We need to get this resolved. It's unfortunate that it happened, but I know that you are looking for what is in the best interest for the Department of Education. Thank you.
Mr. McNitch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and honorable senators. My name is Ron McNinch. I'm a member of the Guam Education Board. I just want to make a couple of brief comments. Our board worked a lot on this particular issue for a long time. I believe that we have a very collegial board and that we are able to get a lot done. But I wanted to point out that in a very strong time of need, the AG's office stepped in when we really needed them, and they took over a lot of the effort on our behalf. And I just wanted to say I think everyone on the board greatly appreciated that, and that helped us to resolve a lot of these things. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Orcott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Senators. I'm Ken Orcott. I'm the Deputy of the Litigation Division at the Guam Office of the Attorney General. We do support the passage of this bill. We think that the Proposed resolution of this case is reasonable. The basis for the $60,000 to be paid to Mr. Fernandez is based upon the provision in the law that allows a plaintiff in a civil rights action against the government of Guam for injunctive relief to obtain attorney's fees. We've had several cases over the years. We had the abortion case back in the 1990s where the government had to pay a couple $1 million in attorney's fees in a civil rights action. We had the tax refund litigation a few years ago that also resulted in the payment of a couple $1 million in attorney's fees. So we think that in this particular matter, payment of $60,000 as attorney's fees for Mr. Fernandez is a reasonable resolution of the case, given the possible risk that if this matter actually proceeded to trial, and if the government lost, the award of attorney's fees would be much greater than that. Otherwise, if the panel has any questions for me, I'll be glad to take them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Diaz.
Buenas and saludos para todos hamzu. Minago ogan para hamzu na bonitos and bonitas and sangatbo na senadores and senadoras siya. Wow, si Jonathan Frank Blas Diaz, maestro in Samoro ni Agasa. Lo ba kwentusi finene na gifino English. Na sinya jo latsi. Na sinya jo magahit na latsi jo lokwe. Lo anay malofani tempo anay maestro jo watu gi ukudu na escuela en 4 kilo giza dedido. Unai esta oportunidad guatu para todo este educator misconduct investigations training finenena. Y certificado de participación de agosto 7, 2015. Pues este y segundo na certificado para manai 3 horas na para educator misconduct code of ethics training for the University of Guam, at the University of Guam, under the Executive Director of Lea E. Santos, the Guam Commission for Educator Certification. Now, I also attended the educator and also administrator codes of conduct of ethics training. And because of this, gifino tamoro na obligasyon ho na necesita tanai hujung esti oportunidad para tana hungok mas na open purafa esti na certificado ko magahid esti na certificado para educator misconduct zan con todo e administrador na misconduct. Pues bana hujung hamdu pago na ogan na minaguf haanin winaiza. Pues esti ginin edzi na tumotogizu pago. Para todo iman maestros and maestra, dan todo esti i obligacionta finenina i costumbre, i lenguaje, zani hinengi finenina nai, lo ginin hinengi, ginin todo i lenguaje ni humuhujung esti gipatsotu, pago. Pues un hungo put todo esti tauto finenina, na pago necesita tafan na iham tu I atfat betun ga iglota na letra gaya gi haanin estisia na ga pues ifenena ababang alu badzena guaha otro sinya lo guaha poema by nai para todo este especialmente para señor Superintendent John Fernandez ababang Iababang na gaga gof bonito, ikulot niya siya, atilong asut zan amarizo. Ialo. Gitodong tosi na zanya ialo. Aanok naguihan zan kulot apu. Badzena. Badzena na gaga gitodong tosi, badzena na gaga hagugwihi. Higante. was graha elefanti dan graha afna klasin gaga malago midzu lomagahin na gaga finetna itauto niaga sa zu guini na esti na importante esti sa afa eleng midzu na an act to approve the settlement between the government of Guam and John Fernandez in the matter of John Fernandez versus the Guam Education, it says Guam Education Board et al., period, comma, District Court Civil Case Number CV-16-00080, comma, in accordance with 1 GCA subsection 1820. The et al. Is what I am here to represent. I am here to represent the inadequacy of this title first, because the et al. Should include administrators. It should also include support staff. It should also include teachers and also one-to-one aides. And it should also include the parents, the guardians, and also, of course, not only the education board, but the children of Guam who are of age at the age of 17 to vote on this island of Guam. This case, in some sense, to me, is that we have an administrator who is committing a misconduct glaringly in our faces by asking this legislature to pay for his bill. And subsequently, is not only suing the Guam Education Board, because remember, the Guam Education Board is an elected body as well. Therefore, John Fernandez is committing an official misconduct, and I would like for him to be subpoenaed before a court of law, because if he's going to ask the people of Guam to foot the bill in which he is prosecuting children, isn't that misconduct glaringly in your faces? And by the very token of some education board members, now remember that we have gone through several Guam education boards, of which he has successfully dismantled. Now, my understanding is that the only remaining person on the original board of this whole case and lawsuit is the good lady, 3 chairs down from me. Unfortunately, or fortunately, that as a former educator, because I was fired by John Fernandez for official SOP 904.602E1, that because I was absent according to the principal, and I wasn't present as a teacher for 180 school days of instruction or its equivalent, and good ladies and good gentlemen, what is the equivalent of 180 instructional days? It is 180 instructional days. Now, there is a bill before this good body, in Bill 160, in which we get the equivalency, but the school board subcommittee decided upon itself to interpret, without consulting a lawyer, along with the superintendent of education, about this issue, this very issue in which it affects me personally.
Can
Yes.
you just address the bill that's before us, Mr. Diaz,
Yes,
today?
but what I'm getting at is I consider this that please go ahead and choose to make your decision whether yes or no. But in my humble case, in the deepest recesses of my mind and my heart and my spirit, is that we need to say no to this resolution and very quickly, expeditiously, officially make that an official record that I would like to enter, that this is also improper for the good lady to speak on behalf of the school education board in which it's being litigated against. Because if she is the only one named in the suit, then I would like to report that the superintendent of education through vis-a-vis his lawyer and the petition of this before, because there's a big conflict of interest I see, because Joe S. and Augustine used to sit on the Guam Education Board. Now, why did I begin this title of, it's inaccurate? Because the et al.
That was the court title, Mr. Diaz.
I elected several of the board members, therefore I'm being sued also as a voter of Guam. That et al., because there are some elected members of this body that the people of Guam are also, children are getting sued. And we need to, get this message across to leadership across this island that we don't stand for that kind of behavior. It is this kind of behavior that we let go and tolerate. But I ask this body to please vote no on this resolution, because we don't have $60,000 on top of the $10,000 of $159,000. Let's just be real, ladies and gentlemen, that if we have $67.5 million shortfall, where is it going to come? Because I can take my case to the court, and it's going to come from the Department of Education, because it just is a cycle of abuse. Okay. And I'm not here to, please, vote your conscience. Vote yes then, But there's no section of saying abstention because of the whole situation now. It's a conflict of interest. So I say yes or no to the bill. Hamzulat mun sa hamzuman matgas lo this Guam education misconduct stands for something. And I'm saying right now that this is official misconduct, and it needs to be done expeditiously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions of the GEB board? Any of you? Vice Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question, and this will be addressed towards, I guess, the Attorney General's office, because there was a question posed a short while ago in reference to other negotiations that has preceded this particular negotiation and that were approved by the AG's office and possibly the governor's office, and they were effectuated. So why would this necessitate legislative action?
I'm sorry. There were a number of people sued in different capacities. If a government official is sued in their official capacity, that's a lawsuit against Guam itself. If the same person is sued in their individual capacity, then they're being sued as an individual, and if they had to pay money, they would pay money out of their own pocket. So some of the defendants in this case were represented by other counsel. I represented only the Guam Education Board and the individual sued in their official capacity, which is basically the lawsuits against Guam. Under 1 GCA 1820, against the government of Guam, arising out of this incident, it would end that litigation.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hi, Mr. Orcutt, or maybe this is for the board, and I wanted to find out, this looks like it's only a part of the settlement that was reached, and it's been separated, just the money part versus the rest of the settlement. And I only know from the news that part of the settlement was to reinstate him without any penalty, right? And things like that. Is this the only part of the settlement and that's before us, or was it a bigger settlement? I mean, wasn't that all part of it?
There were separate settlement agreements entered into as to the other defendants in the litigation. As to the settlement regarding the government of Guam, it's complete within this agreement. I think the board could address the return of Mr. Fernandez to his position earlier, but that was not part of a negotiated settlement.
All right, so I guess I was just curious why we weren't able to negotiate this away as part of the settlement. That's one. And the second part is, from what part of the budget, my copy doesn't show. From what part of the budget is this going to come from? What part of DOE's budget is this going to come from?
Thank you, Madam Vice Speaker. In our board budget, we budgeted for a private attorney, and we've had prior legal counsel, but with the litigation that has gone on and with the Attorney General's commitment that the Attorney General's office will represent the board in any litigation henceforth, we did not procure the services of another legal counsel, but rather we have funding set aside for legal services for the board, and so we intend to use that within our budget to settle this case. This case has dragged on long enough, and we believe that if we continue on the case, it can potentially cost
How much did you set aside?
$60,000.
You set aside 60 for legal counsel?
Yes, ma'am. That's prior to me
For
coming up.
2018, FY 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. That's all my question.
If not, thank you very much. Bill 235 is deemed heard. I want to welcome all the students from Simon Sanchez this morning. The next bill on the agenda is Bill 204. As marked up, the markup version. And I'll allow Senator Ogden to give an opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and most especially for having this particular public hearing. And to all the students who are here, thank you for joining us this morning. Hafa and good morning, students, teachers, and staff. And to the members of the community who could be here today to present your testimony on Bill 204-34 as substituted by the Committee on Appropriations and Adjudication. We initially introduced this legislation back in November, and after thoughtful consideration from testimonies provided at the initial public hearing and working through the recommendations from the Guam Department of Education, we have made a few changes to the latest version of Bill 204, which include the establishment of an evaluation committee comprised of the Superintendent of Education as chairman, along with experts from the Department of Public Works, the Department of Land Management, and the Guam Economic Development Authority. Even with these changes, our goal for Simon Sanchez remains one and the same. We want to overcome the challenges we faced in the procurement process and ensure that a new campus is built for our students, staff, and faculty. Just in the last week, Education Superintendent John Fernandez laid out a plan for Guam DOE in an effort to help cut costs across the board due to the fiscal crisis facing us all. However, it is still a mandate of this government to provide adequate education to every child on this island, and that means a safe, sound, and functional facility. I believe in John Fernandez's leadership and the tough decisions he is making for the betterment of Guam DOE. I believe that he will willingly take the responsibility to build a new Simon Sanchez High School and make the necessary decisions to ensure that every child is afforded an adequate education. I look forward to hearing all of your testimonies and answering any of the questions you may have regarding this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Having registered this morning, I have Chairman Mendiola, Mr. Superintendent Fernandez, Dr. McNitch, and Vice Chair Gutierrez.
Good morning, Mr.
Mendiola.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. My name is Mark Mendiola. I'm the chairman of the Guam Education Board. Dr. Minich, before I had to leave to class, so he asked me to extend his regards. At this time, Mr. Speaker, honorable senators, I'd like to enter my testimony on behalf of the Guam Education Board in support of Bill 204-34. It is our understanding that Senator Frank Uggan and his staff worked with Superintendent John Fernandez to address the issues raised by the Guam Department of Education in December during the first public hearing on Bill 204-34. The marked up version of Bill 204-34 reflects the collaborative efforts of our agency and the bill's sponsors. We are thankful for the opportunity to continue to seek solution for the Simon Sanchez High School. While the superintendent will address the specifics of the legislation, I want to emphasize our support for providing GDOE the opportunity to take the lead in getting a new Simon Sanchez High School built. We recognize the responsibility and pressure that will come with the passage of this legislation, but we embrace it because it's important to our stakeholders at Simon Sanchez High School. We support the bill's attempt to be consistent with existing procurement law and regulation and to allow GDOE to focus on the design of the facility as the first step before addressing the financing and construction of the project. We believe that this makes sense and will give us a better product. Our only concern is that with the authority to solicit for design work and other pre-development activities, we also receive the necessary funding. We are fully aware that the government of Guam is facing financial constraints, but in that light, if Simon Sanchez High School is our mutual priority, we need to ensure that our efforts are properly funded. The bill authorized funding that was reserved for the lease payments for Simon Sanchez High School to be used. In the interim, to support the pre-development work for the project, a completed school and executed lease are at least 18 months away, so it makes sense to use funding that has been set aside for public law to support the activities identified in Bill 204-34 as presented to you today. We ask that we get your support to not just take over the responsibility for building a new Simon Sanchez High School, but to also get the funding to make sure we can get the job done. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify before you today, and we look forward to the legislature's favorable action on Bill 204-34. Sidus Masi.
Thank you. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, Senators. My name again is Maria Gutierrez. I am the Vice Chair of the Guam Education Board. And as Mr. Mendiola, our chair, has already read our testimony, but I'm here not only as a board member, but also as a grandmother and a great-grandmother of students that will be entering Simon Sanchez next school year. Their parents have gone to Simon Sanchez, so you can tell that that school is really all. So I'm here, and thank you, Senator Uggan and St. Augustine, for inputting, considering the first round of our recommendations, for putting it in. That's teamwork between you and you senators and the board of the superintendent of DOE. And thank you, Senator Uggan, for believing in our superintendent that he can take the lead, because that's why I'm still on the board, because I believe in his leadership, that he will take us to the next step. So I urge all of you senators to please pass the bill so we can get moving. Thank you, Sidus Masim. Buenos dias.
Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, Speaker Cruz and members of the committee. Thank you for inviting testimony from the Guam Department of Education on Bill 204-34, which addresses the procurement process for a new Simon Sanchez High School. As the committee will recall, I previously submitted testimony in December 2017, which I have attached to the testimony that I submitted to the committee today. And in that testimony, I expressed our support for the bill, but clarified the need to continue to have the support of other government agencies, such as GIDA, DPW, and others, to have the necessary flexibility based on Government of Guam procurement law to determine the appropriate procurement strategy and to evaluate bids, and then to have an opportunity to address any further issues that might arise in our review of the legislation. In January, and I want to thank Senator Uggan and his staff, I was given an opportunity to review and have input into the marked up bill that is before the committee today. and I believe that the revised version addresses the concerns that we raised last year. So with this in mind, I want to offer my support and the support of the department for Bill 204-34 as revised and presented to you today. In sections 2 and 3 of the legislation, GDOE supports the proposed revisions to existing law, which attempted to go beyond current procurement laws and regulations to further define the terms responsive, offer, and responsive. And I understand the sentiment behind that based on the history of this procurement. But by reverting to language that is consistent with existing Government of Guam procurement law, or by relying on the prior procurement law and regulation framework that we already have in place throughout the Government of Guam, we wanted to avoid creating new or customized definitions that may lead to differences in interpretation and ultimately litigation over how these new definitions are to be applied. So GDOE prefers that we rely on the well-established procurement law and regulations in place and believe that there is sufficient experience within the Office of Public Accountability, as well as sufficient jurisprudence to interpret what responsiveness means in the context of building a new school. Section 4 gives GDOE the authority and responsibility for procuring the design, management, construction of a new Simon Sanchez High School to be financed on a leaseback basis. Although this raises the level of involvement and responsibility for our department, Simon Sanchez High School is a priority for our stakeholders, and we would like the ability to continue to prioritize this project so we get it done as soon as possible. So I want to just express our appreciation for the agencies that have helped us work through the initial stages of the project and the procurement, although we know now that the procurement is at a standstill. So while we thank them for it, it is the department's responsibility to advocate and to take leadership on behalf of our school community. And I know that many senators here today have expressed that concern as to our ability to lead on this effort. So Section 4 gives that authority to the Guam Department of Education, and we accept it. Section 4 does allow that we can utilize a committee comprised of our other agency partners, DOE being the chair, but including DPW, GITA, Department of Land Management, to evaluate the responsiveness of offers to GDOE solicitation. But ultimately, the selection of the winning bidder will be the responsibility of the superintendent. The Department of Education is also authorized through this section to separately and through one or more entities solicit for the architectural and engineering design, development of a comprehensive capital improvement plan, construction management, purchase of collateral equipment, and long-term capital maintenance planning. Now, this was an idea that I know in our last hearing was provided by one of the other applicants for the prior procurement, and we thought it made sense that if we were able to, at least from the procurement side, to be able to focus on the design first and really develop those specifications to 80%, 90% of the drawings, then we feel that the bidding for construction and financing of that project will be a lot more straightforward. I think some of the difficulty we've had now is we've been talking conceptually about a school that we want. We've outlined what we'd like to see as a school community, but that hasn't been translated into any design or specifications that I think would help really solidify what we're looking for in terms of a construction proposal. So our effort today is to break this procurement up to allow us to do the procurement for the design work. I know there may be others who say, why don't you procure for design and other construction management or other types of activities. We like the idea of doing that first, and then when we bid out for construction and financing, we believe it'll be a tighter package. So that's the reason why we support Section 4. Section 5 provides the funding source for these related activities, and I guess this is where we will look to the legislature and to our partner agencies to validate and verify that funding is available. Right now in Section 58 D105A4 of the current Act, or the current law, rental payments are already reserved and set aside to finance the leaseback for Simon Sanchez High School. So that's authorized, and those funds that are collected, that should be being collected now, are supposed to be used to pay back the lease once the lease is in place. Because right now Simon Sanchez is at least 18 months away from being completed, the funds to pay that lease are not needed for leaseback payments, and we just need to know whether those revenues are coming in and whether they can be reserved and dedicated through that source or through any other source of funding to be able to use to fund these pre-development activities such as the design and so forth. If we get the responsibility to carry out the Simon Sanchez project, we are wanting to make sure that there is funding available, to do the pre-development work prior to getting the lease back in place. So that's the focus of that section. And I think the other, and then finally, we noticed that the marked up version of Bill 204-34 removed earlier language that sought to expedite the appeals process for DOE. And as I mentioned last time, while we really do appreciate the effort to streamline any appeals related to any this procurement, we also understood that there may be legal concerns about that section and how it worked, and whether it was actually needed beyond what we're already provided for in existing procurement regulations. So we are satisfied with the removal of this language and the reliance on current procurement rules and regs to address disputes regarding the procurement process. So we support Bill 204-34 as marked up. We thank the committee for prioritizing Simon Sanchez High School and working with us to find a resolution to our current procurement standstill. And we appreciate the efforts of all our elected officials and partner agencies to find a way to deliver a new home for the Sharks. We're hopeful that this time we can be successful in making this dream a reality. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much, Mr. Superintendent, and thank you for your work on the markup version.
Thank you.
Why don't I at this time invite Mr. Flores and Ms. Tang and Ms. Travis or Ms. Tang to come up and give their testimonies, and then maybe give the committee the opportunity with with the two attorneys and Superintendent Fernandez still there to talk about the bill that he marked up and rewrote for us.
And Mr. Speaker, if I can just request that the students who would like to give a presentation, that they begin signing in so that you would have that list before you.
That's fine. Why don't I start with you, Mr. Flores, since you've been here since 9 o'clock?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Bill 204 co-sponsors, Senator Ogden, Senator San Nicolas, other members of the 34th Guam Legislature, and members of the Simon Sanchez Sharks student body. Good morning and happy Valentine's. I'm Phil Flores. I'm a director of Guam Education Finance Foundation, which we affectionately call GEEF, and I'm here today to testify in favor of 204 with some slight suggestions to go with it. And with that, I'll go to my script. The Guam legislature and the citizens of Guam are all acutely aware of the problems the government has faced with procuring the construction of a new Simon Sanchez High School. These delays, which have been due to multiple protests, have resulted in a continuation of the deplorable health, safety, and learning conditions at Simon Sanchez. In addition, the delays have forced DOE to incur more than $500,000 of emergency short-term repairs to avoid the possible closure of Simon Sanchez. As the developer, financier, and maintenance contract for Guam's initial schools, leaseback schools, those would be Okadu, Astumbo, Liguan, and Atacao, GEEF has demonstrated the benefits of a successful public-private partnership with Guam DOE. We believe that the 4 GEEF schools are the best maintained, and with an average interest rate of approximately 2.95%, are funded with the lowest interest cost of all the GDOE lease schools. The construction of a new Simon Sanchez requires multiple disciplines to program, design, finance, and construct the school. The complexity of the procurement process has exposed the process to numerous protests that have resulted to extended delays. We have given a great deal of thought about how to best move forward to comply with Guam's procurement regulations while expediting the construction of a new school for Simon Sanchez. In our December 2017 testimony on 204, GEEF outlined a two-phase path forward to procuring a new Simon Sanchez High School that, if followed, will address the reason for the multiple protests, will ensure the government of Guam gets the lowest construction cost and leaseback rate, and will provide Guam DOE with the professional assistance and expertise to design and develop an educational facility that will meet the needs of Guam's students in the 21st century. We believe that the intent of the markup version of Bill 204-34 is to provide a two-phase approach. We believe it should specifically specify that DOE shall first solicit for the design, construction, management, and financing, renovation, or construction of the educational facility under a 30-year leaseback arrangement. Financing may be implied, but it would be better to be specifically included in this section, as this is a critical component of the funding for pre-construction services, as well as reducing the overall cost of the leaseback. Subsection A4. We suggest Guam DOE select one firm or a team of firms under one procurement to undertake and lead the pre-construction and construction management activities. Having a single point of contact will not only reduce the number of government procurements, thus reducing the chances of multiple protests, but will provide accountability and a responsible vendor who will work with Guam DOE and GITA to design, finance, and plan for the new Simon Sanchez and will administer the construction bid process. This type of relationship has proven to be quite effective and beneficial to Guam DOE with the 4 GIF schools. Okay, subsection B. It should be clear that the initial award of the contract is for the design, development, financing, capital improvement plan, construction management, purchase of collateral equipment, and long-term maintenance, and that the construction will be awarded under a separate procurement and contract. This language, along with the language included in paragraph C of the same section, is unclear. Again, we having the benefit of detailed plans and specifications along with a form of construction contract that protects Guam DOE as part of the second solicitation will reduce the opportunity for and validity of any frivolous contract protest. Subsection E, our last suggestion. A new section C should be included to clarify and provide protection against conflicts that the vendor under phase 1 cannot be the contractor who will construct the building under phase 2. Sample language could be such as this. A successful offerer in the initial solicitation for planning, design, financing activities must be separate and unrelated to the successful offerer for the renovation or construction to avoid any conflict of interest. Guam DOE and the legislature have worked hard to make the construction of a new Simon Sanchez a priority. With consideration of the above changes and the benefits of a strong, effective public-private partnership, Guam DOE can make a new Simon Sanchez a reality in the shortest period of time. By passing the Bill 204, I apologize for my phone, Bill 204 as amended, the legislature can authorize Guam DOE to issue an RFP for a professional team that can carry out the procurement of a new Simon Sanchez in a proven, systematic way. We strongly recommend support of Bill 204 as amended. Oh, it was Simon Sanchez. Yeah. That's all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Flores. Ms. Tang.
Good morning. Thank you. Good morning, Speaker Cruz, senators, and I beg your pardon? Closer? Okay. Thank you. And the student body of Simon Sanchez. Thank you for the opportunity to present our comments. I think that this bill is a step forward, a good effort to get the school built. I mean, we've gone through several appeals, and the appeals have shown us that DPW struggled to get this procurement done. We have advocated that DOE be the procuring agency, and I'm happy to see that it has come to pass in the form of this bill. However, it would be remiss of me of us not to share our concerns and comments, if only just to avoid further protest, not necessarily by Quartec, by another party, of the problems that we see and the conflicts that we see in this version of the bill. And I'm sorry that our submission's rather late. We did receive the marked up version a bit late and yesterday, and did our best to try to provide a clear and succinct comment for this morning. So we basically have three comments, three primary concerns regarding this bill. The first is that
I think it'd be best if you read the whole thing into the record, because I want Mr. Fernandez to hear this, and because I want it very clear. When we had the initial hearing, and he made suggestions, the committee purposely gave it to DOE, because I want the students to understand that. This marked up version was written by Mr. Fernandez and transmitted to us and his legal staff, and transmitted back through Senator Ogden into the committee. It wasn't that we were delaying it in our committee. Your teachers know that we've been trying to get DOE to get this moving. And I want it clear on the record what the comments are and concerns are, and have everybody agree on what is going to happen. We've been moving this as fast as we possibly can. And I don't want the blame laid back on the legislature. We only got this back, and as soon as we got it back from DOE, we announced the hearing. Now I want the superintendent and his legal staff to hear what the concerns are, all the concerns, and have the students hear it, so if they understand if this has to go back for a third rewrite, it's not because of the committee or the legislature, because we gave them the opportunity to be able to do this, and I want you to understand that. Please, if you just read the entire thing.
I'm happy to do so, and I apologize I don't have as many. I brought 10 copies with me, and I apologize I don't have more copies to circulate. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments on the marked up version of Bill 204-34. This letter serves as a written testimony on behalf of Cortec International Corp. with regard to the markup version of Bill 204-34. Bill 204-34, introduced by Senators Frank Uggan and Joe St. Augustine, is an effort to move forward the procurement of Simon Sanchez High School and contains additional changes from the original version of Bill 204-34. This bill seeks to amend the Makahat Act, the 5 GCA 58D, to amend, among other things, to change the procurement agency from Simon Sanchez High School from the Department of Public Works to Department of Education. If this bill is passed, GDOE will be in charge of this solicitation and will be authorized to issue a solicitation for the renovation or construction of a new Simon Sanchez High School, as well as solicit one or more entities to perform related activities, including architectural engineering design, development of a comprehensive capital improvement plan, construction management, purchase of collateral equipment, and long-term capital maintenance planning. We have three primary concerns regarding Bill 204-34. First, Bill 204-34 deleted a critical definition regarding the definition of what constitutes a responsive offer, and repeals the definition of responsiveness, both enacted by Public Law 34-19. The bill also refers to the solicitation as a general solicitation, quote unquote. It should be made clear that the solicitation should be by invitation to bid, not a general solicitation. We don't know what a general solicitation means. Second, Bill 204-34 carves out the scope of work or services that's set forth in Section 58D, 105A4 of this bill in the solicitation, which will include the architectural and engineering design, development of a comprehensive capital improvement plan, construction management, purchase of collateral equipment, and long-term capital maintenance planning, collectively referred to herein as the out-of-scope procurement, which will be separately procured by GDOE. It is not clear in this bill how GDOE will procure from, quote, one or more entities, close quote, the out-of-scope procurement, the method of procurement, and which procurement rules apply. The funding mechanism for the out-of-scope procurement is also problematic, as discussed further below. Third, Section 58D 105B provides that the contract shall be based on a responsive offer submitted by a responsive offer that, quote, offers the lowest annual leaseback payment to the government of Guam for a fixed 30-year term, close quote. The original language in this bill provided that an award would be made based on, among other things, the lowest annual leaseback interest rate. The interest rate is the cost of funds that will determine the payment or the lease amount based on the cost of the project amortized over 30 years. The payment is the amount of the lease payment which does not take into consideration the cost of funds to the government of Guam. The interest rate is the proper method to compare proposals, not payment only. While we support the 34th Guam Legislature's effort to complete procurement of Simon Sanchez High School, we believe that the marked up version of Bill 20434 contains changes that are positive, but also contains changes that exposes this bill, if it were to become law, to grounds for a protest because of the similar problems that plagued the earlier solicitations for the construction of Simon Sanchez High School. Thus, enacting this bill without further amendments or consideration will give rise to more protests and litigation and result in further delays. And the marked up version of Bill 20434 is problematic for several reasons, as discussed further below. So in this discussion section, we elaborate on the three concerns that we've just summarized above in this letter. So on issue 1, this is regarding the deletion of the responsive offer language. Section 2 of the bill eviscerates the in 58D 103M that states that a non-conforming offer is non-responsive if it contains a material non-compliant term or condition that is prejudicial to other offerors, and that the effect of such term or condition on price, quantity, quality, delivery, or contractual terms in the solicitation is more than negligible. These provisions were enacted on June 13, 2017 in Public Law 34-19. Instead, Bill 20434 proposes to limit this Act's guidance regarding the responsiveness to a single sentence. Responsive, quote, responsive offer shall mean an offer that conforms at bid opening in all material respects to solicitation, close quote. This language is demonstrably insufficient to regulate the government's threshold evaluations of responsiveness in this particular procurement. On November 22, 2016, Public Auditor Doris Flores Brooks issued a decision noting that violations of the Guam procurement law in the solicitation for the previous Simon Sanchez High School RFP, including an attempted ethical breach by a government employee, circumvention of the RFP's $100 million compensation cap, failure of DPW to procure an agency to keep a proper procurement record, and most importantly, noted the failure of the selection committee to conduct a threshold review of the responsiveness of all offerors, which is described in detail below. Eliminating the Act's definition of responsiveness and not requiring the bidders to submit a breakdown of the hard construction costs, soft costs, management and development fees, financing costs, etc., will leave evaluators with inadequate guidance as to the meaning of an offer's conformance in all material respects to the solicitation, which has previously led to violations of procurement law that are doomed to be repeated here. A breakdown of the bid would also assist evaluators and make clear which services are being covered and which are excluded in the bid. Issue number 2. The bill 204-34 authorizes GDOE to solicit for out-of-scope procurement-related activities without specifying the form of the solicitation or providing an adequate funding mechanism. Section 4 of Bill 204-34 adds a provision to Section 58D-105 of the Act, carving out of the out-of-procurement, which includes the architectural and engineering design, development of comprehensive capital improvement plan, construction management, purchase of collateral equipment, and long-term capital maintenance financing. While it makes sense, we think, to procure the design services separately, that is the architectural engineering, so it is clear to all the bidders what GDOE wants for Simon Sanchez, and it would also streamline the bidding on the remaining scope of work. That is the construction, the financing, the construction management, purchase of collateral equipment, capital maintenance, which will follow after the design is completed. The cost of the design can be reimbursed, we think, to the government by the contractor developer who is then awarded the Simon Sanchez project. The problem with this provision is that the bill does not set forth the method of solicitation for GDOE to issue this out-of-scope procurement, whether it would be issued via an RFP, an ITB, or some other form of solicitation. Also, the funding mechanism for the out-of-scope procurement does not work because the funding for some of these items, depending on the timing of the solicitations for separate out-of-scope procurement, will not be available until the award is made to the contractor or developer for construction, leaseback financing. The IFB, the invitation for bid process, is the appropriate solicitation method for the procurement of this nature because it protects the government from spending too much for a procurement that meets its objectives and does not involve the procurement for professional services. Leaving the door open for GDOE to procure any other services by any method it chooses virtually invites the same abuses and problems the public auditor noted in the earlier solicitations by RFP. Issue number 3, the responsive offer should require the bidder to disclose the rate of interest used to determine the leaseback rate payment, and the award should be based not on the payment amount but the rate of interest. 58D 105B provides that the contract shall be based upon a responsive offer submitted by a responsible offerer that, quote, offers the lowest annual leaseback payment to the government of Guam for a fixed 30-year term, close quote. The original language in this bill provided that an award would be based on, among other things, the lowest annual leaseback interest rate. While the leaseback payment will be an important consideration for the government of Guam, the award must also consider the interest rate, which is the cost of funds that will determine the payment or lease amount based on the cost of the project amortized over 30 years. The amount of lease payment does not take into consideration the cost of funds to the government of Guam. The interest rate is the proper method to compare proposals, not payment. Finally, Cortec joins the legislature's concern for Simon Sanchez community and understands the importance of expediting construction of the new high school. Bill 205 is Simon Sanchez solicitations. Cortec does support the model proposed in Bill 204-34 of soliciting for architectural engineering services prior to soliciting the construction services and other services. However, such proposed amendment requires further consideration with regard to both the solicitation method prescribed and the funding source. For the reasons stated herein, Bill 204-34 should not be enacted in its current form, but requires further consideration and revisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Superintendent, do you wish to give an initial response and how you wish
Sure.
to
I mean, I would like an opportunity, of course, to review both testimonies provided by Mr. Flores and Ms. Tang, and I appreciate their input. Obviously, this Senator Augustine and the committee's legislation, even though we provided our input and we support the version as is. However, there are ways to improve it. We, of course, would be open to it based on the latest input. So I just want to state that in general. I think because GEF was here and I was able to listen to their testimony. I believe Ms. Tang submitted written testimony at the last hearing, but I know I sat through the discussion on the GEF proposal. I think the authority, the broad authority in the bill that's been marked up allows us to do that. And I understand that Mr. Flores is requesting more specificity into some of the terms and how that works, and I'm open to that. So I'll allow that. I'm happy to work with the senator and the sponsors of the bill to make any clarifications if needed. On Ms. Tang's testimony, I can only comment on the intent of the bill. So the first issue that was raised was, I understand the marked up bill removes further defined terms in terms of responsive and responsive offer, and makes some changes relative to the procurement for Simon Sanchez. The intent behind undoing those changes was simply to rely on the broader procurement framework that we already have existing in the government of Guam, which most agencies and vendors should be familiar with, and which has probably, and I would assume, the issues have been brought to OPA and to the courts on these matters. And so in Section 5201 of Title V, you already have a definition of what responsive bidder means. And so I guess the intent was to rely on that, which is on subsection G of 5201. There's a definition for responsive bidder, which means a person who has submitted a bid which conforms in all material aspects to the invitation for bids. And so I guess the intent was to reflect that, we rely on that language, the definition of responsiveness, and go from there and be able to not tie our hands down or not create new definitions or specific requirements. Now, obviously the legislature can do that, but just as with many laws, if we create a specific definition only for this procurement, my concern is that we then subject that to different interpretations, or if it goes to protest or goes to court, we're considering these issues anew because it's a specific definition created for this particular procurement, and I would prefer that we rely on the experience of our OPA and the courts in reviewing any protests in light of other protests that have been brought before them to decide on similar matters. So that's the intent. Now, of course, the legislature can define what responsive means and can add many more definitions, can go overboard in specifying exactly what responsive would mean in the context of Simon Sanchez, individually, but I prefer that we rely on existing procurement laws that applies to all solicitations. I think a similar comment I would make with regard to the method of solicitation. Sections 5210 and 5211 of Title V GCA specifies methods of source selection and gives guidance as to when an IFB is required and how you bid out for services. So we would like to follow the procurement law in that respect, and to be able to, as we put together the scope of services, utilize the existing procurement framework and the procurement law, consulting with our legal counsel to ensure that we apply the appropriate method of source selection. So if the concern is that in the past other agencies have messed that up, I don't know that the issue is to correct or to further address that through a specific Simon Sanchez only language. I would say it's an issue with the procurement law as it stands. We are looking at Title V. We'd say that should govern. We've got guidance on how to evaluate responsiveness and how to evaluate methods of source selection, and we would prefer to just have the authority and flexibility to work within our procurement experience to apply those terms as is, and not have separate or be directed to go one way when we haven't yet fully specified how we want the services to be procured. So again, that's just a matter of whether you want to create Simon Sanchez specific procurement requirements, or whether we can rely on the broader procurement law as is. And then finally, I think the third comment was with regard to leaseback payment versus leaseback rate. I think we're open to discussing that. I think the issue for me was that we've previously talked about capping the project, and I discussed that with Senator Uggan about how do we know it's going to be so expensive or not expensive, and how do we cap it? And I said, well, the legislature already capped it by separating the Simon Sanchez procurement and identifying the revenues that are reserved for leaseback payment. So if you say $5 million can be used for a leaseback payment, that'll only get you a certain amount of financing. If you say it's 4 million, you know, so you have the authority to cap it by determining what revenues you would like to reserve for leaseback payments. And that's, so when we look at the $5.1 million that's out there for Simon Sanchez, we see that as a cap. So then the issue is with regard to financing and the interest rates and the payment. I think the intent of going towards a payment evaluation is that the payment combines both factors, the rate and the cost of construction, right? So it says, you know, here's a good financing rate, but here's the cost of the school. When you put that together, you get a payment. And I thought the legislature, and I thought we would be concerned about what that payment would actually be and be very clear about that. Because if you have the lowest interest rate, but a higher construction cost or lower construction cost, it yields a different payment level. I thought it'd be very clear to just say, what is that payment? Because if we're interested in finding the most advantageous, efficient, you know, especially in light of our financial constraints, that the payment would be a very clear indicator of what we're obligated to provide. So I'm open to counter arguments on that, but I think that was the intent, was we have a rate, but that just tells us about the financing. What about the cost, you know, under the cap that we've already provided? So I thought the payment, you know, would basically reflect how those variables work together.
I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood, though you keep acting like the markup was somebody else's child, please acknowledge publicly that the markup was yours.
So what I would like to acknowledge is that Senator Uggan sent us the marked up version.
Mr. Fernandez,
Yeah.
if I can chime in regards to this. My office collaborated extensively with Mr. Fernandez, but if you take a look at the markup legislation, it also addresses some of the concerns that were brought up at the initial hearing. So it was a joint effort in regards to the formulation of this. And I appreciate the collaboration that's been extended by the superintendent, because if in fact we are extending the responsibility, and I'm saying that with heavy emphasis, the responsibility of ensuring the construction of Simon Sanchez High School, then he's going to take on that challenge and ensure that the legislation provides for that flexibility. A couple of other items, Mr. Fernandez highlighted it very, very clearly, that the idea here is not to delete any definition based on the original proposal. It's allowing for the Department of Education to work within the framework of the procurement laws, rules, and regulations. The second component on the interest rate or the interest payment, if in fact the government has committed $5 million as your cap for an annualized debt service, that will be inclusive of the principal payment that is due, inclusive of the interest rate. So I just had to re-emphasize those points and thank Mr. Fernandez really for the collaboration and the assistance in formulating this legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And I just wanted to make it, I'm not going to get into what's going to happen up in the courts, but it just seems to me that, at least in recent court decisions that have come down, the actions of this body and the legislative intent in striking this from this bill might be interpreted as meaning that you were striking it and not wanting to apply it,
Right.
though you think it's the general procurement law, that it was intended and you've struck it. I'm not going to get into that, but I'm
Right.
just saying, you know, this is later in time, and I'm just trying not to have another protest, because I don't want this again in here. We're letting you work together to write this bill, and we'll pass what the two of you collaborate together. But understand, you know, if I was to make any amendments, or the committee was to make any amendments, then it'll be because something that I put in there, this is
Right.
This is your child, and if it stumbles, I did not do anything to try to impede its progress.
Mr. Speaker, and I certainly appreciate your assistance in this process. If that is your concern, then we can incorporate a provision that makes direct reference to the procurement rules, regulations, and laws applicable in Guam. So that would address your concern in terms of allowing for the general framework to continue to be utilized.
Right, I mean, and I just want to clarify on the record what the intent was not to strike out and say that we're not going to evaluate this procurement based on responsiveness, but to say that we are going to rely. And so, if anything we can do to clarify that, we rely on pre-existing definitions of what responsiveness means, the same way we would do with responsibility. It's already set forth as to what that means in procurement law. We would use that definition to guide our determinations as we evaluate, bids. So that's the intent, not to remove it. Now, having said that, I haven't really looked at the details of Ms. Tang's testimony or the Mr. Flores. I mean, if there are, I just want to express our intent, and if there are ways to improve the legislation, I'm certainly open-minded. I think we just recognize that it isn't easy to step forward and say we want to take on this complex procurement. We're doing it because we are the Department of Education. These are our kids, our families, our teachers, and if they want us to take the lead and they have confidence in us, we just want to be able to do the best we can and have the flexibility to make the right decisions, notwithstanding the prior difficulties that have been seen under the prior procurement efforts.
Thank you. I think I'm not going to have a discussion about this amongst the attorneys in this. So you have their testimony. You have all the testimony. You can meet with Senator Uggan and come to a decision on what you guys are going to plan on doing. I just want both of you to understand and want the students to understand the committee stands ready to move with whatever the two of you put together and want to go forward, understanding that if anything happens after that, it wasn't because the committee jumped in the way and stuck anything in there. Everything that's in this or out of this is yours.
Right. So the only thing I would say to make sure that we're on the same page is I agree with that. There were two issues that I didn't want to just raise. Number one was that the authority to finance the pre-development activities, the pre-construction activities, I think we had discussed that before. I mean, I think Ms. Tang, I know Geff may have also implied that there was a mechanism by which you might be able to finance these pre-construction activities and be paid through the, however the construction or leaseback is structured. That was this idea that was put out there without really many specifics to kind of judge. And I know in our discussion we said that might actually take a specific authorization and appropriation and an actual appropriation of funding to make sure that we're clear that that's a funded activity and we won't create any conflicts or any other difficulties. But that's something that I think Mr. Mendiola said. As if we need to identify and make sure that there's funding to do the pre-development work, and we're open to the mechanisms that will help us do that. And then the other thing was more of a question to the committee, Senator Uggan as well. My understanding from the staff level is that GITA Bond Council may have had an opportunity to review So the other thing is that we have another partner, GITA, in terms of the financing and signing off on, as we get to a negotiated agreement or a final agreement on the payment and financing. So that's the level of expertise that we want to continue to avail ourselves of at the end of the day in terms of the financing piece of it. So,
okay. I'll allow any member of the committee who wants to ask any questions of this panel. Then I will excuse them and hear the rest of anybody.
So, Superintendent, the funding source that is cited in the new bill now says for the design would be the $5 million leaseback payment. How much do you estimate that design to be?
So right now, there's two parts of that question. Number one, we need to validate and verify. It's nice to have it in the law, but we need to actually verify the numbers, whether that reservation of funds is right, yes, is real, and that what that amount is. Number one. Number two, we typically have put forth percentages. Some people say 10%, some people say maybe 6 or 7% would be what you would set aside for design. I think we need to go back and see what we can do in light of the conversations that we had with the committee, which was what would it take if you were able to, because I don't know that we actually own the designs for the prior schools, but if you were able to take the designs and kind of customize it, place it on the property, then we would certainly want to find a more cost-efficient way to get a good A&E design done. So we're open to that. I think the set-aside was just to say these funds are available, and then we just need to further due diligence as to whether we can do it at a lower sort of cost than we had anticipated. When we say 5 to 10, 5 to 10%, when we're saying, that's a $5 million, that would probably be in the right range. But I understand the concern to see if we can be more cost efficient and utilize our experience in prior projects. So that's I think the only concern was we weren't. I think we're the information I had, and I'll correct it if it needs to be corrected, was that we didn't own the design for the prior school, so we would have to maybe acquire or ensure that we're able to utilize that. But that's the only thing that we need to clarify.
Speaker, may I offer a comment on that, on Senator Talahi's question? My client has informed me that the architectural engineering design budget for this Simon Sanchez project is roughly about $4 million. I beg your pardon? $4 million.
Just to comment, that doesn't necessarily have to come out of GDOE's pocket or Governor Guam's pocket. A good financier can also find what are called anticipation notes that are issued to do the work, the soft work that you're referring to here, and they're called anticipation because they're in anticipation of long-term debt which will pay it off.
And one suggestion we had was that the eventual awardee of the construction and the remaining work will be required to reimburse the government of Guam. So the government can advance the fund or short-term loan it or call it a bridge, whatever you want to call it, to just get the design done. And then when the second part, which is the construction, the capital maintenance, collateral equipment, all that is bid out, as part of that responsibility of that developer contractor is to reimburse the government right off the top, $4 million or whatever the amount is, for the architectural and design fees. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Just one comment. Nobody likes to, and I just want to say this on behalf, and just to the students and the Simon Sanchez community here or watching on TV, is that we're in the middle of reducing budgets or trying to find opportunities to balance our budgets. That's already a big task. With regard to Simon Sanchez, we received a lot of concern as to whether this would impact, slow down, negate this project. So I wanted to just say that, working with the legislature, we want to keep Simon Sanchez High School, their rebuilding, a priority. It's not a luxury. It's an issue that we need to address, but recognizing the health and safety of our students. It's not a responsibility that we are saying we want to take on additional work on top of all these other hard decisions, but it's important that we get it done, and we're willing to get it done, and we need to work together. I don't think it's an issue of handing it off to one agency or one branch of government. I really ask for your continued support as we go through this, and we'll take the lead on it, but we just want to make this a reality for our kids and the students coming after them.
No, the committee also wants to do that, and I want the students to understand that this process can't just be, as a sign behind you says, just do it already.
Right.
It takes some time, and I'm glad that they're down here to watch this process.
Yep.
I wish it was taught in civics class that this process, it's slow. And then there's the court processes. So I'm glad they're here to understand that, and they'll learn, and they will understand what civics is all about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Metanani, want to testify? Mr. Diaz? And then we'll do the students. I believe that's the rest of the public. I mean, except for the students. I want the students to have their own chance. Mayor.
Good morning, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Senators. Thank you for having this hearing on Bill 204-34. I just want you all to know that I'm going to read my testimony as written, and I'm going to add something else, and I want you all to understand that that's part of my testimony. Buenas de Nafade. As the mayor and leader for the Jugo community, I take responsibility for the safety and well-being where it is of great concern. My direction to this statement is my interest for the students, teachers, faculty, and staff of Simon Sanchez High School. I hereby give you my full support. I hereby give my full support to the Department of Education to move forward to rebuild Simon Sanchez High School. The obstacles that has gone on for years due to the so-called procurement process has only placed the students, teachers, faculty, and staff of Simon Sanchez at risk. Let's work together to do whatever it takes to give these students a secure and safe school they deserve, for they have waited too long for this to become a reality. I pray your eyes and hearts will find the compassion to stop the delay and move forward for the betterment of Simon Sanchez High School, its students, teachers, and faculty and staff. What I want to add in my testimony is I don't understand, Speaker, honorable senators, I just don't understand what's going on, okay? And, you know, I just want it clear that I heard you say that, you know, you have nothing to do with Mr. Fernandez's whatever he has in that procurement process. But yet, I don't understand that Senator Ogden and Senator Joseph Augustine are the authors for this bill. And they are advising John Fernandez on things that are being put on the procurement process. So how do you advise and then wash your hands after that and say that you weren't a part of that? And they're a part of the body. Speaker, you honorable speaker.
Mayor, who is washing their hands?
Well,
because I am not washing my hands, and neither is Senator Sinogson.
But the speaker said that he's not responsible, and you're part of this body, and Mayor, I don't understand that. So,
Mayor, just by virtue of
just explain to me where that is coming from.
Okay, let me say this.
Because I'm speaking on behalf of the students, because this is going to delay the building of Simon Sanchez if somebody comes up and says something about that. I don't understand that. You know, might as well take Mrs. Stan's testimony and use it. She's like advising us. I don't understand any of this. So please explain.
I speak now?
Yes.
Mayor? Okay, Mayor. First of all, when the Department of Education, inclusive, by the way, of other agencies, GITA, we reached out to GITA to seek some guidance in the preparation of this legislation. We, in terms of my office, we also ensured that our legal counsel here at the legislature had an opportunity to review the proposed legislation. So we did our due diligence. We worked and we collaborated with John Fernandez, because this is going to be a huge responsibility being extended to the Department of Education. From his perspective, he has to feel that, in fact, whatever framework is established by law, that he's able to proceed with the construction of a brand new school. Ms. Tang's comments here is welcome, because we want to ensure that we don't have any additional protests. But we have to recognize that protests could be part of the process. We're trying to minimize the possibility of that happening here. Secondly, the Speaker, by virtue of presenting this legislation to his committee, after the collaboration amongst the government agencies, as well as review by legal counsel, he expedited the hearing. That's why we are here today, because we are trying to move forward with the construction of Simon Sanchez High School. It's not disowning any process. How can the chairman, the Speaker, disown or separate himself from this process when in fact this committee is having the hearing today. So this assertion or any statements that someone is trying to remove themselves from this process, I think is an incorrect evaluation of the entire process. We are trying to work to address the requirement to proceed with minimizing the possibility of a procurement on this, the reconstruction or the building of a brand new Simon Sanchez High School. So Mayor, please understand that we are all on the same team. We all have the same intent in mind, and that is to move forward so that these students or any of the freshmen or sophomore can have that opportunity to be, or even a junior in that brand new campus. So we need you to work with us rather than making some assertions like that, and make sure that we can move this forward.
Senator, I understand where you're coming from. I don't want any problems to be brought up that can interfere in the process. That's what I'm saying. And I just wanted you to make me understand so I can shut my mouth when I think that really when I have understand what's happening here, because I really don't. And now that you've explained yourself, and that's it. I just want to be sure that there's nothing that will come up and stop the process again. That's all I'm doing. Okay? I'm not pointing any fingers. I'm explaining, and that's why I want that to be part of my testimony. That's, I don't want, and like I said, I'm not pointing any fingers or trying to make anybody look bad. I am trying to protect the process here. That's all I'm doing. That's all I'm doing, because I don't understand. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz.
Buenas and saludos todos hamdu. Minagov para talo si Jonathan Diaz esti. I'm going to preface this in English, and I used to teach at Ukudu High School, and I'm one of the few teachers that actually went to the Guam Home Center and actually bought paint for your school. So I want to let you guys know that I did that. Okay, not to gloat, not to get your votes or whatever. Okay, but just to say that if I'm at Ukudu, I'm also at Sanchez, right? If I'm at GW, I'm also at Southern, because it is one community and one island and one voice that we are trying to exude. When I say exude, that means to really empower you, the next voters of Guam. My understanding is that you are the juniors and seniors, and how disappointed I am that you are here, and that we should maybe pause this and go back to school. That is your priority right now, to graduate, right? Seniors and juniors, to get those credits. And I'm very, why can't we do that? And we heard from our superintendent today, and I'm going to say, I have to say no to this bill, okay? Don't get mad, get glad. Why? Because Senor Diaz is here to save the day again. Because I want to just take it to the very last page. If you have a copy, if you don't have a copy, you can request from the legislature, and they must Xerox the copy for you. But at the end on page 6, okay, if you have the bill, line 23, $5,051,977.98 per year during the pre-development, construction, and lease back period as outlined in subsection 22425 Q4 and 6 of Article 6, Chapter 22, Title 5, Guam Code annotated, keep hereof, the revenues pledged or reserved and thereafter received by the government of Guam or by any trustee, depository, or custodian shall be deposited in a separate account and shall be immediately subject to such reservation or the lien of such pledge without any physical delivery thereof or further act, and such reservation or the lien of such pledge shall be valid and binding against all parties having claims of any kind in tort, contract, or otherwise against the government of Guam or such trustee, depository, or custodian, irrespective of whether the parties have notice thereof. The instrument by which such pledge or reservation is created need not be recorded. See that need not be recorded. So what we're doing is that we are owning Simon Sanchez, right? We own Simon Sanchez, but through this bill and the enabling of this bill is that you are now renting Simon Sanchez, which means that Ukudu High School, like Ukudu High School, where I used to teach at, is still on a lease. JFK, my understanding, is still on a lease. Tizen is on a lease. So what in a nutshell, what the superintendent, it gives the superintendent too much power through the Department of Education to use Cortec to float the other places that need to those constructions, okay? So what they're doing is using Simon Sanchez as a guinea pig so that it's like a pot where they go into the next school, like Tizen, for example. The government, through Cortec, can't get water to the second and third floors of a Cortec-produced building. Now we have an issue with the charter schools like Guahan Academy, right? Now we're concerned about leases there. And so what happens to those charter school kids, they are public school kids, they're not private school kids, is that they have to get siphoned into someplace else. So for example, the content of this bill that I have is in the title. And Simon Sanchez High School, that's why this is a spreadsheet from the Department of Education. This is the elementary, and this is also the high schools, excluding some of the stuff that we have. We have 40 schools that need the repairs, ladies and gentlemen. So your younger brothers and sisters also need their schools to be renovated. And it just cannot be for Simon Sanchez, but it must be for every school that was created after 1972, when, for example, a lot of the Department of Education, used to be called Guam Public School System, used to be created. So I came from JQ San Miguel. We go there now. It needs a lot of repair. You know, I also went to Antolon Middle School. That school just got renovated, but is, again, you know, where's the money? It's being siphoned into a one corporation situation, ladies and gentlemen. And that the privatization of government is a very real issue that must be addressed by this legislature, and it must stop. And it must stop with us giving and leasing out, because every other government agency has been leasing out. And now we are in a $67 million deficit, in which we had several executive orders allowing for this. So this is called the exorbitant waste of government spending. And it's at your cost, ladies and gentlemen, future voters of Guam, because we don't have the money. And I'm going to tell you, this bill might not see light of day. And the reason for that is because of the shortfall. So let's cry together. But at least see what happens is that if Cortec owns this now, after this bill goes through, and the government is short on money, they can close your school down and then redirect you to another
Mr.
school,
Diaz,
right?
Mr.
So
Diaz, can
that's
you
it. That's it. Thank you.
address this?
God bless.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Those who want to come up and speak, please. Whoever wants to come up and speak, you're welcome to come up and speak.
As well. I'm in there somewhere, but second page somewhere, just so we can kind of get things moving along, sir. Just yeah.
I leave it to you. Whoever's going to come up and speak, speak. Whoever wants to just submit their testimony in writing can do so.
Okay.
I'm inviting whoever wants to come up and speak at this point to please do so. And I look to you to either start or you'll let them speak first. I'm not sure.
Okay, I'll just keep mine very short. I don't have a written, but I'll go ahead and start, and then I'll leave it up to my students. Just listening to the testimony today, there was a few things that I kind of felt.
Just identify yourself. So
my name is Andre Bainum. I'm a teacher at Simon Sanchez High School. Like I was saying, that there was a few things that made me feel a little bit kind of excited, I guess, and confident about this bill. And from hearing from Mr. Flores and his support for it with amendments and changes, and then Ms. Tang's testimony as well and her support of it with changes. I think we have an entire community that is looking for this bill and are excited for this bill to move forward and to get passed. And with your comments earlier that you will support, that this committee will support this bill, I think it's very reassuring to the Simon Sanchez community. There were a few comments though that I kind of, with all due respect, take exception to, and I believe that yes, we've all worked together to get this bill written and to have it submitted. And the ideas came from all the stakeholders and all the people that were involved, including the superintendent. I've given a call to Senator Frank myself, Senator Uggan myself, and Senator San Augustine, and I applaud them for all coming together. And it takes I don't have to tell you, it takes a community, especially when it comes to education. And the comment, I guess, Mr. Speaker, that you said that once we give it to you, that it's yours and don't blame us and everything. I think, Mr. Speaker, that we need to remember that we got to all come together, and you guys as the lawmakers and as the power brokers in this community, if John does stumble or the superintendent does stumble, that you're there and you're going to continue to be there. And to say that once it's yours and see Benetsu, you failed and all of that, it's kind of, I was just a little bit concerned about that. And I hope that's not the outcome of what we're trying to do, sir.
What I was suggesting and why I wanted Ms. Tang to read her entire testimony was I wanted him to understand what some of the concerns are. I don't want him to be defensive about recommendations, accept them, and work it through. Work it through. Don't just say, I'm not going to accept the recommendations of the one that has been protesting the most. Take it into consideration. Don't just say it's no, because if there's another protest, we've tried. I've spent 4 hours with you up there at the school. Everything that we've tried to do to move this forward. So all I'm saying is, please, the stakeholders especially have to understand they've got to listen to the criticisms and the suggestions and be willing to say, yes, I want that in this provision.
Right.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
And as long as that's understood, and I want the students to understand that this is going to take a little time. It can't be already. There has to be some time to rewrite this, and it can't be passed this next week unless we can all agree that all the suggestions that have come up today are addressed, because we don't want to stumble again. That's all I'm saying is, please listen to everybody, listen to what the public auditor has said in the past, and don't repeat it. If the public auditor has said, have a clear definition of responsible and responsive bidder, don't strike it from the bill, because you're only inviting problems. And the Vice Speaker has just reminded me, the OPA is not here to provide testimony because this process is still under protest, and it's in court. So it's moving forward in the court system, and we're trying to find another vehicle to address this issue. But it is time-consuming, and I just want them and you to understand that this just doesn't happen. And please, that we are trying to prod everybody to see what is going to be what's finally passed, because what's finally passed is what's going to be out there and may be the vehicle for protest, and I don't want that. Right? That's all I'm trying to get across. So you continue.
Well, no, I'm glad you clarified that. You know, the way that I took it when you said, well, we're giving it to you and it's up to you and this is going to be your thing, and you kind of put your hands up like you were going to say, well, we're out of it. So since you clarified that, I understand that you're going to continue to fight no matter how long it takes, because this has been 7 years and 5 years that we've tried with the Department of Public Works, and we've tried for 5 years, and then we got into this idea was generated, you know, and I think it was a very good idea on behalf of Senator San Augustine and Senator Uggan to come up with this bill. And we came out and I supported it in December, and then we gave all this time to work through that. And yes, it's going to take a little bit more time, but I think after 5 years, I don't think this community, I don't think the legislature and the leaders have the luxury anymore to say, can it just wait a little longer? Can it wait a little longer? You know, and I understand what you're saying, that the process is a slow process, but it's been half a decade, sir. And it's and if we move at that, if we continue to look at this issue from that perspective, and we don't put it as a priority, because as you're going to hear from the testimony, as you did a couple months ago, it continues to get worse.
Everybody knows that it has been. You've called the office and we've told you we're waiting for it to come back.
Absolutely.
And as soon as it was received by us, we announced the hearing.
Absolutely.
So make it clear to them that we were moving.
And we're going to continue to move in a quick pace to try and get this done.
And we're trying to. And it takes everybody to stop and listen to what is being said and not be defensive about what is being recommended, and to take it as constructive criticism that needs to be improved.
And that's why I mentioned, sir, in the beginning of when I was speaking, my testimony was that I'm kind of, you know, a little bit happy about what I heard today. Is you have the competing factors in this room all kind of agreeing, and then the committee all agreeing. So we're moving in that right direction. And I just wanted to reiterate that and ask for your support for this bill. I think it's a good bill. It's going to move forward. And I know we're headed into some financial situations, but it should not stop. I mean, let this body be the body that pulls the rabbit out of the hat and fixes a school in the middle of these tough financial times. I think it can be done. You know, let's not use that as our excuse to say, oh, well, this and that. We got to continue on with the mandates, and we got to continue on educating the students. And even if it takes another half a decade, we got to just keep going and support everybody in this process, because really it does take a community. So thank you. That's all I wanted to say. And so I guess the students can speak.
We'll start from this side. We'll just go down the line. Introduce yourself so we have your name on the record.
Okay. Greetings, everyone. My name is Isis, and I'm currently a junior that was told that my class of 2019 were going to graduate from a newly built school. But then again, they have also told previous classes that as well. For many years, students, teachers, faculty, upon the renovation of JFK and Ukuru, I have been to Ukuru due to band practices, etc. And I have seen their facility, on the outside of the facility is getting moldy and all that. And I'm just wondering if like any funds are being put into like help the schools being maintained, and therefore hence the renovations and infestations and etc. And yes, that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Have a day. My name is Joyce Martin, and I am a senior at Simon Sanchez High School and proud to be a registered voter. We are gathered here today on a day of love to discuss Bill 204-34. Before I begin, I would like to give my utmost gratitude towards the senators for putting effort in this bill. The people of Sanchez are going through troubles every day, but they still manage to cope with what little we have. Sanchez is a strong woman, but she has fought too many fights and faced great tribulations. You can see her tears streaming down the walls and dripping from the ceilings. Her scars of battle are covered with plywood and left to be untreated. They said she is ugly, but in reality, she is in fact the most beautiful. Sanchez provided a home to hundreds of students from different cultures and came up with one family. Even though we don't have enough classrooms to occupy the amount of students, she manages to always fit more. We don't ask for a fancy school. The gym doesn't even need to be air-conditioned. Sanchez's life made us appreciate everything from using the library as a classroom, getting wet while waiting for the bus after school, and even using a toilet without a door. Our hardships and struggles only made us stronger. In celebration of Black History Month, I would like to ask you a question that Martin Luther King Jr. once asked. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? And I think the most important thing is the safety of the students and for their education. Thank you.
Hafade, my name is Nikita Sanchez, and I'm a current senior and registered voter at Simon A. Sanchez High School. I'm here today in support of Bill 204-34, which would transfer the procurement for a new school to GDOE. Since I was in middle school, the government has talked about rebuilding Sanchez due to its deteriorating conditions, yet up to now it is still an issue. We have worsened, and it's a shame that the students, faculty, and staff have to endure it every day. We understand that a risk with advancing with this bill, but since December 2017, which is when we first held a public hearing on this matter at Sanchez, up to now, with some progress, we thank you for. However, it is not enough. We need more to be done in order to avoid problems from arising, such as that with the proper construction of the facility and all the details that accompany them. You all are highly educated individuals, so all that we ask for you to do your jobs. Don't let our concerns and voices go down the drain with all these broken promises you made to us. We're tired of getting our hopes up only to be let down and disappointed time after time. Stop letting us wait any longer than the 7 years that we have already been. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, senators, officials, and fellow Sharks. I'm Andrea Lumba, and I'm currently a senior and the Student Body Association treasurer at Simon Sanchez High School and also a registered voter. We all meet again after 2 months in regarding Senator Frank Uggin's Bill 204-34, which I restate I'm in favor of. We are all here today discussing the same bill that we feel will change everything. We are going to be here again and again and again until we see the new campus that has been promised to us for the past 7 years. For leaders who are so in favor of and claim to prioritize education as a top priority and necessity for success, you fail us by letting us continue to attend our classes at this dump site we make believe a school. We are sick and tired of this. We are sick and tired of sitting on public hearings, protests, and repeating the same concerns and requests that we all know you guys are sick and tired of hearing. We are sick and tired of holding on to empty promises and words that mean nothing but simply wasted air. We are sick and tired of protesting and screaming at the top of our lungs to be heard, and all we get is the loudest silence in response. We are sick and tired of waiting for a huge change to happen, but not in the way where the walls with holes are painted over as if putting a Band-Aid over an open wound would heal it. All we ask is, as our leaders and public servants, stop the bleeding and give my school the surgery it needs. I honestly do not know what else to say, but this is not the end of this fight. We will not stop trying until we truly get what we deserve. We are going to make it happen. I'll probably see you all again about this bill or the situation of Simon Sanchez High School, my soon-to-be alma mater. Thank you, respectfully.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Patrick Anthony Tyron. I'm a senior from Simon Sanchez High School. I am in favor of Bill 204-34. Sanchez was supposed to get rebuilt a long time ago, but nothing is happening. The younger generations may be a little impatient, but come on, this is ridiculous. We need action. We can't let this project fester and rot behind the scenes. Words only have meaning if followed by action. Or, as my dad would say it, go big or go home. Guam has faced invasion, disease, occupation, and war. Let's not make the thing that destroys us complacency and greed.
I'm sorry, I thought you had something on the back side and you had a second page. That's it? Okay, thank you. Oh, I thought there was a second page. I thought you were going to turn it over and read some more. Oh.
Thank you. If I could,
Any other
Mr.
students
Speaker,
wish to come up?
if I could,
Go
just
ahead.
say one more thing about the specifics with the bill. I forgot to mention that there was a section in here which talks about an evaluation committee, and in that evaluation committee, I see that there are departments in that evaluation committee, but what I do not see in that evaluation committee is student representatives, senators, and parent representatives, I mean, everybody in this, and I think it would go a long way, sir, to help the power brokers, I guess, remember who they're doing this for and why they're doing it, and maybe it'll kind of urge them to get this process going. So if that could be added to the bill, as well as some student representatives and community and just your regular stakeholders, I think it would help the bill. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, any other students? If not, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to my colleagues. I also just want to take the time to thank everyone for participating in this process. I think it's really important that we have these opportunities for you to really voice your opinion and your concerns about the things that are going to be affecting more than any of us, the next generation, the future of Guam. So I really want to thank you all for coming out. I also really want to thank those of you who provided testimony and who mentioned that you were registered voters, because again, that's an opportunity for you to participate in this process. So thank you so much. One of the things that I wanted to discuss and bring up is Bill 94. And that was my very first bill that I introduced as a new senator here in the 34th Guam legislature. And I was really happy and so grateful to all of my colleagues who voted for that measure. So basically what we did was we rolled back our senatorial salaries. So we gave up about $30,000 a year. And my bill took that money and reappropriated those funds towards the repair of Simon Sanchez High School. So all of the things that you're mentioning about leaks in your school and classrooms that are just in complete disrepair, we understand. We really do care. This body really is hearing you. We're listening, and we're trying to address the immediate situation, and we're also trying to address the situation of rebuilding a new school, because I think I agree with what your teachers have stated, with what our Superintendent Fernandez and all of the stakeholders here. We all understand what the concern is, we understand what the needs are, and we just want to make sure that we do this the correct way so we don't have to be brought back in here again and have the same conversation over and over. It's a waste of all of our time. It's a waste of your time, your energy. But I do want to thank you so much for participating in this process, for taking the time to understand how this works, and for lending your voice to it, because I think it really helps all of us to know that you're behind us and you want us to all succeed as a community. So thank you so much to all of you, and thank you to the stakeholders who came before and the previous panels to give their recommendations and their concerns. And I look forward to working with my colleagues to making sure that we are able to amend this measure so that we can get the full support and just get things moving. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Mr. Chairman. I want to also thank everyone who has participated in the formulation of this amended version, from the superintendent to the GITA representative to our legal counsel to the Speaker's cooperation in expediting this particular public hearing. I want to specifically thank Isis, Joyce, Rita, Ms. Gumba, and Patrick. Thank you very much for making your statement today, because I remember 4 years ago when we walked in the shoes of a shark, and it was since then that this issue continues to be prolonged. And it is because of you students that this process is moving forward. We had no control over the protests that were filed. We had 3 separate bids that went out. And unfortunately, regardless as to what the findings were, DPW was just not able to get it done. So now we're looking at giving it to the responsible party, and that is the Department of Education through your superintendent. And we're certainly hopeful that whatever legislation, in whatever final format this is, that at least perhaps some of the seniors, if not the juniors, will be there for the groundbreaking. At least the groundbreaking, because that would say that the process is moving forward, and eventually you would have a designated timeline of when the school will be finalized under the leadership of Mr. Fernandez as well as the Board of Education. So I want to thank you, the students who provided testimony. Thank the students for coming down, Mr. Bainum. Thank you, and Ms. Masnayan. Thank you very much for allowing the students to be part of this entire process, and we certainly look forward to pushing it forward. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Just wanted to also say thank you to all the students and teachers and the principal and the superintendent and on the Board of Education, everyone who came down to testify. I hear your frustration. I think I want you to also hear that we are also equally frustrated and pretty much disgusted by the delay. And because it's very, very clear that by law, the funding has been available. This is not a problem of we can't find the funding for it. It's been a problem of managing the construction, really, just getting that part done, because the money's been there. The prior legislatures did that. So it is very perplexing for all of us. And I've, in just the 1 year that I've been in the legislature, seen this legislature come in several times trying to finesse that process because of the problems that exist. And the auditor has found problems in how there's a committee that manages this process, the procurement, right, to how you get to the construction. And there's a committee, and there's always been the same committee. And these are, you know, the superintendent, the Department of Public Works, the GITA, the Guam Economic Development Agency, to tell us how to finance this. And I think EPA was also on that committee. But this committee, they're supposed to come, you know, to the table with their best ideas, their best ways to move this forward. When the public auditor has found problems, so we as a legislature have come back and tried to change the system, to shortcut it, shortcut the way we're going to procure this, make it different than the way we've procured every other thing. And so I think we've tried to make exceptions, but what we really need to get down to is just really the basic that that committee has to work. This bill is going to change the process by changing who's the head of the committee. So while that other procurement proceeds through the court system, this bill would change that the head of the committee is no longer DPW. The head of this committee is now going to be the superintendent. But I really think where all your input is very critical and should continue to be made, in addition to here, is it should be made with the superintendent. Because the superintendent, regardless through this committee or the prior committee setup. He is the one who's bringing, on behalf of DOE, what DOE wants in this school. And we've had several hearings where I think it's fair to say that it hasn't been very clear. There was one time when there were no specifications, very solid specifications as to what we are going to get in our new Simon Sanchez. And so that's where I really think collaboratively all the stakeholders should be working, because regardless of which process goes forward, that has to be done. And we don't want to take any additional time to decide that, right? So if we're going to change how the school is going to be configured, or whether we're going to use an existing plan or not, I mean, I would just suggest that they move forward with that type of planning and collaboration with all the stakeholders. So, I mean, we're going to try again, perhaps through this bill, to find another way to get the people on this committee to get this done and in conformance with the law, because sometimes the public auditor has said that they weren't doing it in conformance with the law. So that's really, I mean, we have to all work together. The committee, us, if we can change the law again to make that faster, we will do it. But as you've heard, that is a very complicated legal thing, because we're making exceptions to the regular procurement law. So I just wanted to thank you for being here. I think your input is important, and thank you all. But please continue to work together. Let's get the Simon Sanchez that you want at the end of all of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, one last call if any students wants to come up and slide that.
Okay, hi, good morning. My name is Berncie Lazama, B-E-R-N-C-I-E. I am a senior at Simon Sanchez High School. I'm also a registered voter. And I'm here today in favor of Bill 204-34. First, I'd like to thank everyone involved in making this bill and supporting it and taking their time to be here today. As a senior at Simon Sanchez, I've been promised year after year after year a new school. And I'm here today, not for myself, but for every generation after me. My little brother is going to be coming to Sanchez in a few years, and I hope that in time, Sanchez will be caved in. We weren't allowed to walk on that area. It's so dangerous. And how can you allow us to still go there, to still attend this school where it's harmful, it's dangerous? Our restrooms are dangerous too, they're gross. We have leaking toilets, leaking sinks. As Joyce said, some restrooms don't have doors, or if they do have a door, the locks don't work. And that's just uncomfortable. You know, how would you like your daughter, your son to go to a school where they can't even have the privacy of using the restroom by themselves? There's a door, yeah, can you come hold this door for me? You know, asking strangers. And our gym is small. A lot of our lights don't work. We have no aircon. Our windows are broken. And our sports facilities, can we even call it that? Because all we have is a field with hundreds of potholes. It's like, how are we supposed to become the amazing athletes? We have a lot of amazing athletes at Sanchez, but how can they work to their full ability if the facilities we have don't allow that? Sorry, I still got stuff. Oh, our main building has no windows, absolutely none, and isn't that should be a fire hazard, I believe, if the school was to catch on fire or something. There's no windows for the smoke to ventilate out or filter out or whatever, and then we would die of smoke inhalation and stuff like that. As I said, or someone said earlier, all the students in here are juniors and seniors, and we have hope that the Sanchez will be built, but we know that it won't be built before we graduate. But we're here because we care about everyone else, every generation, and just to reiterate, we want our siblings and everyone else's siblings to have a good facility where they can come and feel comfortable, feel safe, and feel like they want to come and learn. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Young lady, you came up before he did. Please.
Hello. Okay. Hi, my name is Jesus San Jose, and I'm a junior at Sanchez. I don't want to read off of a testimony, mainly because I've written so many by now. I co-led the Kneel for Sanchez protest, and then a few weeks later, I was the girl in the center of the table reading to the press conference. And then a few weeks later, I'm giving a testimony at my school cafeteria. And then later on, I'm delivering testimonies here because students couldn't give it at the conference. And now I'm here, and I don't know how you can justify that a group of students are missing school because they want the school rebuilt. And I don't want to complain about how there's leaky ceilings or inadequate classrooms, or mainly anything that needs more repair, because the point is already made that we need to be rebuilt. You guys can say that you have seen all the things that are wrong with Sanchez, and we understand that you do. But speaking as a student, you don't live it. We lived there 3-4 years by now, and you don't see how there's so many problems that students aren't supposed to deal with, but we do. And it's a tiring thing to hear that, in all respect, we know the process is long, but 7 years is very long, considering the fact that this has been brought up over and over again, and you can understand how we're frustrated. It's not a thing to have students come down here and justify how they don't like living in the school because you don't live in the school as the student. We do. It's very hard to understand how we're always there and we deal with all the things that happen, but nothing is being done. And here I am again testifying for this for the fourth time. It's frustrating, very, very frustrating. And in a strong point, we just want you to know that whatever process gets this done faster or correctly, or whatever just gets this done in general, will help a lot, more than just sitting there another year, maybe, next month in another testimony doing this. It's wrong. And we shouldn't have to sit here and ask who's doing their job right or who's doing it wrong. We want to know that something is being done to get this done.
Thank you, young man.
Good day, Senators, Speaker, Vice Speaker. My name is Nell Cosby, and I am a senior currently attending Simon A. Sanchez, and I will be voting in the next elections. I just wanted to start off with a question, well, actually, technically, 3 questions that I wanted to ask you. How long, or how many times will you watch a show, the same show, over and over before you get sick of it? How many times will you listen to the same song over and over before you begin to want to rip out your ears every time you hear it on the radio? And how long will you how long will you keep making the same empty promises over and over again about rebuilding our school before the people that elected you to be where you are right now, or will vote for you in the future, begin to come at you with pitchforks and torches? Because we've been through this song and dance over and over and over again, and frankly, we're really tired. I'm not the only one. If you just look around, there's a bunch of students here. It's not just the same kind of students. We are a diverse group with one common interest. We just want our school rebuilt. If you look at our schools, like if you've been to our school, like there are classrooms that are hotter than the actual outside is. There are some classrooms where it's super cold, but the classroom right next to it is literally like a sauna. It's crazy. I don't even know how that happens. I can't explain that. And it's really sad because I'm on the dance team from Sanchez, also on the tennis team, and we've been removed from our actual barn, which is the room that we used to rehearse. It had all the mirrors in it and had a nice space for us to practice dancing. However, due to the lack of classrooms because of safety, what's the word, violations, I guess, they cut the barn in half by literally putting up a giant wall. So then the barn is just 2 small rooms. And it's kind of sad because they like ripped off the mirrors and put it in some small room by the gym, which is super hot and has no ventilation. So when we practice, we just die. It's hot. I can't breathe in there. And our tennis courts, they're not even tennis courts. They're just like cement. It's just with like 2 nets that are really in bad condition. I don't know. It's kind of sad. It's really sad, actually. But I just implore you guys to listen to all the students here today. Thank you and have a happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you, young man. Why don't you go ahead, since you came up before you did.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Matthew Fernandez, and I'm a senior in Simon Sanchez High School. And ever since I was in middle school, I was told that the school was going to be worked on getting rebuilt. And I was hoping that when I get to high school, that I would be going to a new school, but that didn't happen. So I was hoping that I would at least be graduating in a new school, but that still didn't happen. So now I'm in my last year, and we're still in the same old school that needs to be rebuilt. And while I might not be here for the new school, as well as most of the students here, if not all of them, I'm still hoping that you can get to rebuilding it faster so that future students can enjoy the new school, as well as our current teachers and staff, because they deserve a new school also. And because the school that they're going to now, I don't need to go into detail about it anymore because you already heard it countless times. You just need to look at it and you can already tell that it needs to be rebuilt. So please just rebuild it, and thank you for listening to us, and I hope you do something about it very soon.
Thank you very much, young man.
Test, test. All right, good morning, Mr. Speaker, and good morning, Senators. My name is Noel DeGracia. I'm a senior at Simon Sanchez High School and also a registered voter. Now, before going into my testimony, I just want to explain some of the things that I observed when I was on the sidelines listening to some of the previous testimonies. Right now, I heard some of also you senators and also the superintendent and just a bunch of people just confused about where this process is going and where it's heading, about all these steps that are being made. And I understand that you guys are making progress, and I commend your efforts for you guys for doing that in regards to rebuilding Simon Sanchez. So I'd like to begin my testimony. So I believe under the Guam law, they must provide an adequate education in school to students. An adequate public education system is defined as one that has a healthy, safe, and sanitary learning environment. And our school is a prime example of a violation of that law. Just a few years ago, an inspection of the school resulted in 72 demerits, which supposedly means that the school was to be shut down. But however, they kept the students, and within a week, they were able to bring down the 72 demerits down to 22 with these Band-Aid fixes. And however, again, that is another violation of the law. Having students participate or going to school while these demerits are present isn't acceptable. And that is also another violation of the law. As you can see how severe our problems we are as students coming here to testify during our class time, you can see how much that interferes with our education and how important this matter needs to be addressed. So just like everybody else, I feel like this process is in a gray area, and I feel like everything has been written in black and white, but everything is being scratched out again. So we're all confused about what this bill is going to actually do for us. So in closing, I hope that, again, Senator Elgin, your efforts, and Superintendent John Fernandez, and also the committee will work together in order to get the efforts in rebuilding Simon Sanchez. And I thank you for my testimony in that.
Thank you very much, students. With that, I will adjourn the hearing with Bill 204 having been heard. Thank you.